All right. I'm trying out a new microphone. Hopefully, it's better than what I've had before, and hopefully, none of the setup will actually collapse on me while I'm coding. We're still working on the voting system for GoldPath. The idea is that GoldPath will be like the shared space between stakeholders and developers and like product owners, and it's the one place where they can come and like collaborate and see progress and make sure there's transparency as well. And what I'm working on now is the ability to um, my that webcam is acting up, of course. All right, um, let's try again. So we're working on the goal path. We're working on the goal path voting feature. The idea is that goal path will be like the joint place where developers and stakeholders can go in and they can sort of talk, discuss, and have a shared view of what we're working on, if we're working on the correct thing, and also, yeah, talk about it. So stakeholders can view progress, developers can update and do estimates, and basically have an automated Scrum setup. Sorry for using a swear word because apparently people don't like Scrum anymore. Understand why, but it's not Scrum's fault. Um, Goal Path keeps track of all your goals and milestones. So basically, Goal Path will allow you to have a set of business goals for your company or your product, and then you set milestones of how you want to achieve those goals, what features you need, or things you need to do, etc. Stakeholders can then come in and vote on those um, milestones using four like fairly popular frameworks for doing like backlog prioritization. The idea is that you have one tool where they can go in, they can vote, and then we calculate an average business score, and everyone can see what is important and what is not. So we don't want to put effort into milestone planning or backlog planning where if the stakeholders, when they think about it, realize that, oh, maybe this isn't that important. Because usually what happens is that stakeholders are quite often like enticed by the last discussion they had, the last customer they had, the last issue they had, or what's currently going on. And then a week later, the priorities might shift. And this is a way to sort of center yourself and make sure that you align what you want to work on with the actual business goals that you're trying to achieve. So GoalPath is currently we have four different frameworks available in GoalPath. It's impact versus effort, the RICE scoring model, the Moscow model, and then weighted scoring model, which is used in SAFe, but it also allows you to create your own sort of criteria for scoring, which then in turn would allow you to have questions that are more aligned to your business and your like product. So having this in place, what we're working on right now is this voting dashboard for stakeholders. When they log in, they get to see milestones they voted on, and then they have milestones to vote on. So the idea is that they sort of have a inbox to zero. They can come in here and see if, oh, I need to vote on this, and then the system will take care of the rest. So if we hover over the business value score, we can sort of get uh, an overview. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see it. We can see an overview of how I really need to get another camera for this. Um, we can see how the stakeholders have voted, and important and why we voted this way. So that allows everyone to have a clear discussion of like, wait, you thought this was a five, or wait, you thought this was a one, or and then you sort of similar to what we're trying to achieve with planning poker. Now, although the features are currently working, we got that working in the last session that I had. I'm doing these 30-minute sessions just before work. And what we're doing now is we're trying to reduce the amount of duplicated code because there's some code duplication going on, and I just want to like keep it tidy. Because the tighter you keep it, the more you can use LLMs and and they will have a more correct interpretation of what your code base is trying to achieve, instead of you trying to sort of reinvent or instead of the LLM trying to reinvent everything and then you increase the amount of duplicate code. So we already made sure that the vote average, we have some to-dos in the code since last time. And the one that I thought we should focus on today is this one, where if we look at what's going on, we have a to-do here. This is the cast vote action. So this is the action that is actually run when a stakeholder is voting. And we can see that it has an input, which is the stakeholder ID. Now, I don't want to use this kind of input from the front end because my architecture is already taking care of a lot of stuff. So last time or like maybe it was 2 sessions ago, we reduced the entity ID here and instead used existing entity, allowing my framework to load everything, check if it exists, check if you have access to it. So we sort of access control on existing entity, but we're trying to do the same with the stakeholder now because I don't want someone to log in and then type away in the inspector and just vote as someone else, because this actually allows you to vote as someone else because we're just accepting the input to the action instead of relying on the context that we have here to make sure that we're actually voting as the person that we're logged into. So what I want to make sure is, before I just change this, is that the stakeholder ID is actually an ID, the same ID as we have on the context. So let me just change the context and we can see I have a session user and we have it there. So have the ID there. But I don't think this is enough. The reason that I don't think this is enough is because I designed it so that you can have multiple projects. So this is just your logged in user. This is not your project member status. So I think what we need to do instead is, instead of doing it like this, we need to actually fetch the project member. Const project member. We find the first project ID and where we have your user ID. Thank you, Copilot. And then we should change it to, no, not context, but actually project member ID. There we go. And if we don't find it, and there's no project number, then we're not, actually this error message is wrong. You don't have access to this. There we go. And now we're actually using our logged in information to make sure we're casting the vote as the logged in member. And if we can't find it, then we don't, there simply isn't a project ID, like a project member for this project with your user ID. And then we throw an access issue. Whoops. So if we do this a lot, then I would actually move that into the TRPC context, or a helper function that just makes it easier to work as the current logged in project member. There's like 2 occasions that I'm doing this, and I don't think it's really a big deal. So let me just verify this if I find it. And Give me more options. Thank you. I don't want the files to include spec files. So when I said 2, what I actually meant was 8. Uh, all right. This is actually an improvement that we can do on the entire code base, but I will not do it in this scope, because if I do it in this scope, I will just scope creep and I will never finish this feature. But let's finish what we started here. So what I did was I removed the need for one input, but all the other components are currently still using that input and still sending it to the server. And that gives the wrong impression. And especially if an LLM is looking at this code later, then having more parameters that you're not using is just going to confuse it and cause further havoc. So I generate these things, and so I can just go in my model. I'm using Clay. Clay is a model-driven code generator. And I just remove the stakeholder ID. And if we go down here and I just ask Clay to regenerate everything, then it will simply it will remove it from the generated forms. This one doesn't have a form, so we need to check that ourselves. It will remove it as for input validation. It remove it from our different is it working? Yeah. So apparently my sound's cut out because it's going through the camera. All right, we can look at our type definitions to just make sure that what we've generated now is actually the removing of the stakeholder ID from the cast vote schema. So this reduces the amount of data that we're sending and causes less confusion, and we can run the build. So because I'm using TypeScript, hopefully I removed all the because I'm using TypeScript, hopefully the build will tell me what's wrong, if anything is wrong. If I'm sending extra parameters, I'm not sure that will help, but we can also open the vote uh, voting form. There we go. Here it is. This is actually what I just need to remove. I just want to see if the build will find it, because I want to trust the build. Come on. Yeah, see, the build found it. This means we can remove it, or like we could remove it even without the build failing. I don't want the help, thank you. And if we run the build now, we can be fairly confident that it's working. So after this, I'm going to run the tests. Unfortunately, this takes a little bit of time to verify, because I think the test will fail now because we're no longer sending the stakeholder ID. So I need to make sure that the context that I'm using is actually set up correctly. Otherwise, the test will fail for the cast vote implementation. So we just need to update that. And once that in place, I think that's about what we'll manage to do today before I need to go to work. I'm planning to have a longer session tomorrow afternoon. Oh, look, found another place. Uh, yeah, of course. There we go. I actually found a bug that I caused. Um, So I'm going to have a longer session where I refactor tomorrow. Hopefully, it will be on a new feature. Not sure yet. Depends a little bit. There's one place where I calculate the averages. The to do down here. Make sure this is correct. I know that there's one place that has its own calculate averages implementation. We're going to remove that. Maybe use this one, but at the very least, we're going to remove that. And then we're just going to make sure it's correct by checking some specs. So I'm not sure that that will actually be something that I stream, but then I'll start a new feature when I'm, um, oh, the build's passing. Then I will start a new feature on Wednesday, roughly around 6 p.m. Um, Central European Standard Time. All right, and now run test, and we want it to be pretty fast, so we're just going to run the cast vote test. Three, two, one, come on. Interesting. There's something wrong in my model file. I think we can just remove that. But we also have the failing test that I wanted to check. Here we go. Yeah, so we're no longer accepting the stakeholder as input. We can still have the stakeholder set up. We can see here that the stakeholder has a session ID with project roles where we are a stakeholder, so that's correct. But we need to make sure that there's a project member, create test project manager, same user, same so, and with a stakeholder role. So this actually looks like the test will work. These red squiggly lines is because I have two different uh, frameworks for doing expectations, and I haven't updated which one that I want to use in Visual Studio Code. It's annoying. I set up some Cypress tests, and Cypress is using Scion for its expectations or assertions. And unfortunately, yeah, that messed up all of my other tests that are not using Scion. Everything works in the build system and the tests, so that setup is correct. It's just Visual Studio using the red squiggly lines, so I need to update that at one point. Let me know if that's something I should stream or cast, because that will just be a refactoring. We still have an issue, even though everything looked like we would actually get it to work. So stakeholder ID should be stakeholder.id. That's the project member, so that should be fine. So after we cast our vote, we still don't find it. Interesting. Nothing went wrong. Okay. Let's do some poor mank debugging here. Yes, I know that I've cast successfully, but I actually want stakeholder ID in test, and I just want to verify in cast vote that I am in fact finding the correct project member. So let's just see if we find the right project member, and then we can compare the two. Because so what changed? The only thing we changed is the stakeholder ID parameter to the project member ID. So I just want to make sure that we are using what the test expecting here. So maybe I'll split that to the right so we can see both implementations. don't need that right now. And we have the cast vote here. So when we run it, here we are. Stakeholder ID in test is this. And we can see that that is in fact not the project member. We are casting the vote as the owner and not as the stakeholder, because if we look at the context that we're setting up for the test over here, we create that, we say, here's the context, that's the user ID. We're reusing this user ID. We have we have the same user twice. Do I want that? Not sure. Let's create another test user. Like this. We can create just the owner ID. And then we just change one to owner ID. That means we can tell this one to have the owner ID. So my setup project is setting up this one with the owner, and then my test is actually using the stakeholder, which is what I want to make sure it works. I know that the owner has all kinds of user access to the project because it's the owner of the project. That the idea is that it's the product owner as well. But the stakeholder is the one that's actually using this function. There we go. Everything's working. And let's just make sure that we have the expected changes before I commit this, because no, I shouldn't have removed that one. All right, let's not do that then, but it was weird. So this is the benefit. When you change something with clay and you regenerate, you get it back the exact same way. Nothing changes. We made no changes to that. We've updated cast vote. We changed the typing definitions because of we removed the stakeholder ID. We removed the stakeholder ID as an input. We updated the model to do that, and we had the clay. And then we have some leftover code here that we're going to have to clean up. So let's start by doing git status. We're going to add our changes. No. I prefer to do this over the command line for some reason. Add clay, add source app roadmaps, ID. No, no, yeah. Voting components need to. So doing it this way is tedious. However, in having this being tedious, it also makes sure that I keep a clean working space. So maybe we should just clean that up. We're using the correct input for the logged in user. All right, so we fixed that problem. We have some excess code here. We can actually just clean that up. We want to clean up the source app folder. We want to clean up the components folder. Everything else is checked in. Let's take a look in this folder and see what's in there, just to because if I do a clean on this one, it's a folder, so there's stuff in here. That's actually the method that I was threatening to remove just a little bit. So let's find out if we're actually using this one. It's defined in the model. We are actually using that in the voting card. Which is an unsaved file. Was this the file that I just removed? No. Okay. Let's see what this is. There's some notification in it. Uh, okay, so this get stakeholder votes. This is actually changed quite significantly, and we're using it. All right. This is good. Opening the model phone. Just not sure about this component, because let's check out the voting list. We're using the voting form to vote. And the voting list here, that's the voting card. That gets the stakeholder votes. We're using the stakeholder votes where? Because this one, yeah, this one has the voting tooltip. The voting tooltip should be self-sufficient in data. In here, this one's getting the voting summary. So what are we actually using user vote summary from? We have parsed votes, valid votes, user votes, has voted. No, don't like this. Not sure this is used at all. Parsed milestones. Let's take a look at that page that we're voting on. So that's under source, pages, vote, voting. No. Did I call it stakeholder? My mind's blanking. It's called voting. There it is. This one actually loads up has its own cards, loads its own lists using the milestone voting card, which is not the same as the components that we, or is it the milestone? Yeah, this one is in fact using stakeholder votes. This is really excessive. Don't like this. We do need the data for the voting model. The voting model actually needs the current user vote. Okay, we'll keep it. Don't like that. So probably need to clean that up. This, it's weird that it's a new file that's empty. So this is not actually, this is the old implementation. Okay, I get it, I get it. I moved the entire implementation to a milestone because you vote on a milestone, not on the actual vote. There we go. And then I just didn't remove the files. That's embarrassing. And then this one is in fact just a prettier reformatter thing. Let's run the build. Yeah. Let's look at the model. This one takes the ID and only the ID, parses the data. This one worries me a little bit. This is actually, if we revert this, I think we'll be in a happier place. This is excessive. ugly. Uh, Cool. Someone asked me questions. Uh, I find it easier to not debug because I have a lot of tools helping me out to have it working. And I also have a lot of context in memory, but it's reduced because everything follows the same pattern. Um, I'm not sure where I had hard-coded credentials. There shouldn't be any hard-coded credentials. There's setup in the tests with credentials, but everything else should be fine. Uh, and a brief rundown on what we're working on. We're working on a voting feature for stakeholders in GoldPath. Um, the idea is they can come in, vote on milestones to sort of give them a business value score. And I used an LLM, and now we're just cleaning up all the mess that the LLM made. Um, I hope that answers questions. Glad that I have questions. And yes, my camera looks busted sometimes. I did a firmware update on it, but still not really working. Stash. And this should actually be the working version. The stakeholder email. There's no hard-coded stakeholder email. Thank you. Thank you for helping me out. I appreciate it. The camera's been acting up, so I guess I need a new one, or maybe there's a setting I should look into it. Everything's building. The tests are working. And if we restart my development server over here, because it needs to restart every time you run a build, that's part of the next working. We can refresh our page just to make sure that we're still getting the data that we expect. And come on, there we go. Everything is running a little bit slower when I do everything at once. So we have the milestones here. I'm just going to recast the vote, see that it updates. We've updated, the business score is recalculated. We can see how I voted. We can then, that's the one that I've been working on. There's a bug, need to fix that. But we're gonna recast this to maximum vote, see how everything goes up to 100, because if everyone gives fives, this should be maximum amount of business value score. Everything is loading. Just the failing tests. There we go. We have 100 business value score. Tests are still running, so things are a bit slow. This is actually working. Let's take a look at this one. We're done there. This red tests is something that I did not like. What's going on here? Set status. This is actually a different test than we've been working on. This should probably just work. That's probably just a fluke. Probably. Here's for hoping. But there we go. If we take a look at the cast vote that we were working on, we removed the stakeholder ID input. We're now relying on validated input that the context has, where we check user access and access to projects. And there's one to do down here to check the average votes. We're going to look at that. Maybe I'll look at that myself. There's some tests that are acting up that I apparently need to take a look at. That is not what I expected. And then hopefully I will start a new feature on Wednesday. And then we'll start a little bit from scratch. There's still some work has been done, but it will be a lot of going through stuff. So I'm going to sit all night and do that. And hopefully, if you want to join me on Wednesday evening, student time, I'll finish this up and we can start the new feature together, hopefully. All right, I really need to shut this down and go to work because this is just my hobby project. And I hope you enjoyed it. Like, subscribe, all the stuff. Thank you so much for the chat comments. It actually helps me improve both the audio. I hope the audio is way better. I'm using a different microphone, a completely different microphone setup. I hope it works. And then the issues with the busted camera, I need to figure out how to solve that. It's behaving. It's been behaving now for the last part of it, but it really acted up a lot in the beginning. I'm sorry about that. Uh, thank you for hanging out with me this morning. And it's time to go to work. All right. Bye.